Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the new Stranger Things teaser for Season 5. Now, a little later, we're going to have a few guests on to give our best guesses about what the hell is actually happening in this trailer and what movie references they may be using to draw inspiration for this season.
Man, I don't even remember last season. It's been so long. 21 years in my lifespan.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap since, half the teaser is a recap anyways. So last season alternated between showing the events in March of 1986 and Eleven's childhood in the Hawkins lab. In those flashbacks, we met number 1, aka Henry Creel, who had powers even stronger than Eleven's. They fought, and she pushed him into Dimension X, and he became a creature known as Vecna. And Vecna has been the big bad behind everything in this show. We also learned that the Upside Down was actually just a snapshot of the real world created when Eleven opened the gateway back in 1983. Throughout the season, the team was split up thousands of miles apart. Joyce and Murray went to Russia to save Hopper from a Russian gulag, where they fought Demogorgons, while others drive from California to Indiana. And along the way, Eleven goes to a new government lab where Dr. Brenner,
who did not die,
restores her powers. Back in Hawkins, the rest of the kids learn that Vecna is connected to a family murder inside of a house that happened in the 1950s. And then they make good friends with Eddie, a dungeon master who has been accused of murder after Vecna took control of a high school girl's mind and killed her. So now Vecna has laid his eyes on Max, and they barely save her with the power of Kate Bush. Mostly everybody reunites, Eddie sacrifices himself, Eleven brings Max back from the dead, and they almost win, but Vecna succeeds in opening up a gate to the Upside Down, making Hawkins look like hell on Earth. Now, the official story is that there was an earthquake, but some people in town probably believe that Eddie's little D&D group, the Hellfire Club, somehow opened up a literal gate to Hades. Now, the last season was in March of 1986, and it was released 3 years ago. Obviously, the child actors have aged up a lot since then, so they've jumped forward a year and a half to the fall of 1987. So this places the season a full 4 years after season 1, which that's kind of perfect. The show is about growing up, so setting the series over 5 years as the kids age from 8th grade to their senior years is a great metaphor for their own growth and maturity as the years have gone by. Now, as we go along breaking down the teaser, I'm going to point out a few behind the scenes facts that have been released about the show because they provide some clues about what we can expect this season. The trailer begins with Joyce recounting the first season to Will.
I think about that night all the time.
Now, we see this structure a lot in trailers for a final chapter, like how Obi-Wan narrated over the prequel footage in that first trailer for Revenge of the Sith.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, before the Dark Times.
It's reminding us of why we like Stranger Things and how far we've come, but it's also showing how the season is coming full circle. Noah Schnapp, who plays Will, has hinted that the connection between Will and Vecna started everything in this show, and it has a beautiful payoff at the end. So Joyce recounts the night that Will disappeared as we run through the events of the show. But I'm also wondering if there's going to be hints in how they edited this. So we start on the search for Will, and then we see the boys find Eleven in the woods, but notice the edit here.
The night it came for you.
It's interesting that they show Eleven at this moment and not the Demogorgon. This is because Eleven opening the rift to the Upside Down is actually what allowed Vecna to send the Demogorgons after Will and Barb and all of the others. So I wonder if there's going to be some kind of hidden darkness inside of Eleven that's actually been enabling Vecna this entire time. Then we see Joyce using the Christmas lights to communicate with Will, and we actually saw those lights in the Stranger Things Season 5 set tour video. So it's possible that we could have a flashback to that moment, but maybe from Vecna's point of view. We see Hopper searching for Will, followed by the techs at the Hawkins lab in their suit. Now then we see Eleven in the sensory deprivation tank, and this could be the moment that she actually created the Upside Down. Again, I think we're going to learn a lot more about that moment and about what Eleven actually did to create that snapshot and to enable Vecna to enter our world. And then we see the moment she flipped the van in season 1, and this is when Joyce says,
Tonight. All of this started.
Making me think there is definitely a reason why Vecna chose Will. I think we're going to relive that night from the point of view of young Will, maybe using the same de-aging technology that they used on Millie Bobby Brown last season. And I think that the true mystery of this show is going to be connected to the first few minutes of the series, and we're going to find out that the answer was under our noses all along.
Hey person, guess what?
What?
I got you a present because, you're my special guy.
Oh, what? This? All right, let's see what's in here. Whoa! Doug, did you get me the Billionaire Box from Syndicate, the sponsor of this video?
Uh-huh.
Guys, Syndicate is a unique and unforgettable cake experience, and it is the perfect gift for Father's Day. Hey, Doug, should we try this one?
Uh-huh, go for it.
All right. Awesome. All right, so guys, this one is called Ferris Wheel, and it actually comes with 10 cake donuts that spin around until you decide to eat them. What I love about Syndicate is that I live really far from home, and I know I could just send somebody cards or something like that, but I want to give something extra and special. And these gifts, by the way, are not just for Father's Day. They offer a range of products perfect for any event. Birthdays, anniversaries, retirement, life day, you name it. Syndicate is both thoughtful and hassle-free, but most importantly, it is so much fun and delicious. So, to send your cake today, use our link in the description and use the code SCREEN10 to get 10% off your Syndicate today. It is a really fun gift. Now, back to what I was saying. And then we go into season 2. We see Hopper in the tunnels under the pumpkin patch, Will seeing the Mind Flayer for the first time, Jonathan and Nancy getting closer, and this is a cool contrast to the shot later in the trailer where we see Nancy using a shotgun to kind of show how far they have come on their journey. Then we see 11 closing the gate while wearing her Chicago punk clothes.
Yeah, I didn't like that episode.
That is one of my favorite episodes of the series, and I will die on that hill. Next, we go to my least favorite season, season 3. We see them fighting the Mind Flayer in Starcourt Mall and the death of Billy, taking us to season 4 with Max visiting his grave. And then Eddie in the Upside Down as we hear Will say, "We failed." And this is going to be like a major part of this season. After every season of the show, the heroes believe that they won. Like there were consequences like Hopper's death or 11 losing her powers or the deaths of many supporting characters, but for the most part, the team has never had to grapple with failure. But now they have truly lost. The Upside Down has come to Hawkins and Vecna has won. And then we see Vecna in his house, but in the Upside Down, the moment he revealed his true identity. Max barely escapes from him at the graveyard, followed by 11 getting back her powers in the lab, and then ending on the shot of everybody being reunited at the end of the season overlooking hell on Earth. So that takes us to the new footage. This first shot shows Joyce in a barn holding an axe. Now this is obviously a callback to season 1 when she chopped a hole in the wall to see Will in the Upside Down, which of course was a callback to Jack Nicholson taking a hatchet to a door in The Shining. But notice that here she's in a barn, which could be Merrill Wright's farm. He was the owner of the pumpkin patch that was infested with vines in season 2. In the background we see Will and Robin, and we know that Joy and Robin will be doing a team up from behind the scenes photos that have been released. And just above them, I think this is Jake Conley as Garrett. We see him cowering behind Mike a little bit later in the trailer. Let's actually hope he has a better lifespan than most Stranger Things supporting cast members. And then we see that there is something just outside of the barn door. So this is actually like a reverse Shining. Instead of breaking a hole in the door, Joyce is defending something that is trying to break in. And then we see Mrs. Wheeler cowering with Holly. That's Mike and Nancy's younger sister. Holly has been recast this season. She's actually played by Nellie Fisher and will have a much bigger role in season 5. Episode 2 is actually named The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler. Again, calling back to episode 1 of this series, The Vanishing of Will Byers. Lucas is visiting Max, who appears to still be in a coma after the events of the finale. Notice the drawing that she made of her and Lucas at the movies has been hung over her bed as he is visiting her. Now remember, her death is what allowed Vecna to finally get enough strength to enter the real world. 11 brought her back, but she is still in a comatose state. So it could be that her consciousness is still trapped with the Mind Flayer in the Upside Down. We might even see her mind wandering around the Upside Down, and that could be why they have been so tight-lipped about her role this season. Like imagine if they had to bring Max's body to the Upside Down to reunite it with her consciousness. But I'll get deeper into theories a little bit later in the video. Now we also know that Linda Hamilton has been cast in this season, but we don't know who she's playing. The Duffer Brothers have had a lot of fun casting 80s stars like Paul Reiser and Sean Astin in supporting roles. And of course, Hamilton was the star of the first 2 Terminator films. And then we see the show's all-time best team-up, Dustin and Steve in the Upside Down. Now notice that Dustin looks kind of rough. Now in this BTS photo, we see Dustin actor Gaten Matarazzo looking like he's just been beaten up. And in this BTS footage, we can see the stunt coordinator working with Gaten at the graveyard. The channel Michael J theorized that the bullies from season 4 were desecrating Eddie's grave because they blame him for opening this hellmouth in Hawkins. But then Dustin rises to his friend's defense and gets beaten up. Then we see Hopper and 11, and notice Hopper has a big beard, marking the passage of time and potential conflicts with Thunderbolt's filming.
Ha ha ha! Yes!
11's powers seem to be out of control as alarms are bearing down on them. I think this is the same government facility we see at the end of the trailer, and that makes sense, that the military would build a base on top of the rift to the Upside Down. And then there's this enormous growth, which could be the border of the Upside Down. Now, we've asked this before, like when 11 created the negative image of the world, did she duplicate the entire planet or just Hawkins and the surrounding areas? And we also see something growing in this wall. This could be egg sacs, similar to the eggs of the xenomorphs in the movie Alien, that of course were referenced when Joyce and Hopper entered the Upside Down in season 1. I think this is Jonathan and and Nancy looking at the wall, even though the trailer edits make us think that it's Steve and Dustin looking at the wall. And then we see Mike protecting new characters, including Garrett. I really like that the middle school kids are now older, so they are the ones who are looking after a precocious group of youngsters who are maybe doing their own investigation into the Upside Down. Joyce and Will are behind them, and behind them we see a dead soldier on the ground. So this is likely in that same government facility that we saw earlier. And then we see something pounding at the floor that's over the rift. Notice these metal plates are clamped into place, but the monster is still able to break through, appropriately, from the floor to show it's coming from the Upside Down. And we end with Will looking up, probably at the Mind Flayer, and screaming. Now, I want to go over some theories for this season, which has some interesting episode titles. One of them is Sorcerer, which could refer to Will's wizard character. Another is Escape from Commist, which is a bat-like demon in Dungeons & Dragons. Now, that particular episode title, The Escape from Commist, is really interesting because that is a monster from D&D, and I know that my good friend Colton Ogburn here has a theory that might relate to that. Colton, good to see you. Colton is, of course, the guy who's trapped in the TV but doesn't know it, so please don't tell him. Colton, what are your theories about this season? What do you think we're going to see?
Well, I'm really hoping that we see the return of Eddie Munson. He's gotten huge since that previous season. He's, of course, now playing Johnny Storm, Human Torch, and Fantastic Four. I would say he was probably one of the greatest additions to this franchise in a long time. Yeah,
but he was eaten by bats, so how's he going to come back?
He's going to be a vampire, obviously. When anybody gets eaten by bats, they become a vampire. I think that he is going to be a servant of Vecna. My wife has actually shared this popular theory with me before that, how this Stranger Things is kind of a lot of it's based on D&D. Vecna is of course, a D&D character. And in D&D, which I am not super familiar with, but I do love the theory that Vecna has the servant that's called Cass, right? What's the full name that you just said? It's
Commissats.
Yeah. Vampire servant of Vecna. I think that Eddie, when he gets attacked by those bats, we are going to see our beloved hero that everyone is so crazy about, absolutely adores. Of course, we see him return as a bad guy, and everybody thinks he's hot, which he is. So of course, give him the vampire teeth and the glistening eyes. I think that'll work really well. So that's what I'm hoping for.
And maybe they had that. I could see them not having that planned out ahead of time, but based on the popularity. But he's been shooting Fantastic Four and stuff. But then again, it seems like they've been shooting Stranger Things 5 for years. So yeah, man, I love that theory. I loved Eddie in that season. I hope, though, if he comes back, it's not going to be we can save his soul and now he's back to being Eddie. One great thing about this show is that death does have consequences. We've had some a lot of fake out deaths, actually, one per season. But who doesn't mourn the loss of Bob,
I totally mourn the loss of Bob. I feel like in the Stranger Things universe, I'm Bob, so I really feel for
Cam,
Bob.
what about you? You got any hot theories for this season? Any hot takes?
I've got more of a question, which is, how do we think they're going to deliver on this this emotional connection between trauma and the Upside Down? Because I feel like a lot of the characters that we've seen interact with the Upside Down, whether that's Max or Billy, who...
Well, Hopper, season 1, going and saving Will, was him. They kept flashing back to his daughter, who has been recast this season. So we're going to have more flashbacks to his daughter. And he blamed himself for his daughter's death because he was exposed to Agent Orange and passed on something in her genes. That's very good. So that ties into genetic trauma, which is great.
And that's what I'm wondering is, there's so few through lines that connect Stranger Things season 1 through season 4. It feels like every year they just start to kind of think of new and go with it.
Well, it's like they're always surprised they got another season.
Yeah, they're always surprised that they even started filming it in the first place. I was 15 years old when Stranger Things came out, and I am 24 right now. So I feel like, the way that I grew up with Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel the same way about Stranger Things. It's just something
I was working in this video store when the first season came out, and I've working in this video store now.
Yeah. With Netflix, you can't blame them for being surprised that they got another season. They are pretty notorious for just
because the
pulling
streaming model says that basically after 3 seasons, you're done. You're not going to get any more viewers, so they don't care anymore.
Yeah. I hope there's a book one day, sort of like the book about how the MCU came together. That's just here's why Stranger Things happened over 10 years. Here's 300 pages explaining
it's a victim of its own success, where they didn't want to rush out the next season. They want to do what True Detective did. And they also just had these actors who became really in demand and were harder and harder to nail down. I love your thought, though, on the trauma connecting everything, because as we learned last season, the Upside Down was born of Eleven's trauma. When she opened up that rift, she was actually creating a snapshot of the Upside Down at that moment. I think that's super interesting. And maybe you can actually predict these characters by saying, this is where they are, where the characters are, so that will inform what happens to them this season.
And it is interesting. We did just watch David Harbour walk into an alternate dimension defined by people's trauma in the movie Thunderbolts, where the void was sort of a little bit like the Upside Down and connected to it like that. But yeah, I think that Stranger Things has a real opportunity in this last season to hit a very heavy emotional chord by saying, okay, the way that each of these characters has interacted with the Upside Down is tied to those deeper emotional truths that they're looking for, which is why characters like Billy are so quick to become servants of Vecna. Is Billy, as an abusive person, is clearly so traumatized, and Billy has so much pain on his own. So I really hope they deliver on that, and they've had 12 years to do it, so I'm sure they will.
And that's interesting because that you go back to Will, right? The trailer makes it very clear. It all starts with Will. And Will was the first person that the Demogorgon or Vecna targeted. And in this last season, we actually, all we know about Will so far is that he can shake and look at the Mind Flayer and will not let go of that bowl haircut. But this last trailer, this last season, we did see, that he's in the closet. He's in love with Mike. He's afraid to reveal it, which it's the 80s. It makes total sense that he would be afraid to tell Mike how he feels, especially since he knows Mike doesn't feel the same way. So there is that kind of shame that he might feel from being a queer kid in the 80s, trauma from his dad leaving and calling him those names. And maybe Vecna sensed that pain, and that'll be part of what ties all this all together, because otherwise they spent a lot of time in that in season 4, when they could have had Will be in the closet, but not necessarily in love with Mike. So I think that's actually going to play a big part in this last season too.
I think that Will or 11, I think one of them has to die, if we're getting into theories. I think one of them, with their connection to the Upside Down, one of them has to be this sacrificial lamb type character that decides, okay, we have to put a stop to this once and for all. I think one of them is going to die this season.
Well, and I'm curious if they're ever going to get a return to normalcy, right? So at the end of season 1, it seemed okay, so the government knows and these people know, but other than that, the world's unaware of all of this stuff that happened, right? So it's all kept under wraps. And 11's gone. We think she's dead. Maybe she's not. And then they get that little tease that it's going to continue with Will barfing up the slug. But other than that, it seemed like the world was back to normal, status quo antebellum. Now there's no going back. So I am curious, is it end up going to be oh yeah, it was just this earthquake, natural disaster under this Indiana town, or if it is going to turn into a wider world conflict? I don't know, but I do agree with you that somebody with a connection to the Upside Down has to die. And if it's 11, then that means that maybe this will be a world okay, no superpowers, right? No more mutants, done.
I hope they keep it somewhat secluded. The government comes in and puts up a big fence or something like that, and the world is kind of ignorant to what's going on there. I hope that's the direction they take. I don't want to see it take on this global phenomenon. I want them to end up saving the world, but the world never knew. That's what I prefer.
Me too. The way I think they could bring it up in a more of a global sense is, remember we had this undercurrent of the Satanic Panic in the last season, which in the 80s was when moms thought that their kids playing D&D and listening to the heavy metal music were going to turn them towards Satan, right? And they had these massive record burning things and stuff like that, and it was a big deal. It was all over local news and stuff like that. They're going to blame that faction of people in Hawkins are going to blame the opening of the Hellmouth on Eddie and the Hellfire Club. So in the trailer, we see this shot where Dustin looks like he's been beaten up. Maybe he continues to get bullied for being one of those demon kids that, brought this hell on earth to Hawkins. And I also wonder, it's been a year and a half, so clearly they're not overrun with demons at this point, because the government, it looks like from the trailer, swept in and put physical barriers in place. And I think those barriers are going to start to break down, like we see at the very end of the trailer. I don't know, Cameron, what do you think? Do you think that the religious undertones are going to play much of a part of this?
I hope so. I mean, that just brings us back to them having the opportunity to do something that's thematically interesting and says something larger about the story. I think when I think of this season, it brings to mind those Jurassic World trailers where you start to see the dinosaurs like in the real world outside of the park. And I'm wondering if we are going to get, the Demogorgon takes New York City. Part of me feels like Stranger Things wants to go big, big, big. I think it's very Sean Levy and it's very Stranger Things to want to just pull out all the stops for season 5 and, do Stranger Things Goes Global. And I also think Netflix probably wants to set up the opportunity for spin-offs and for new material. I don't think they're going to want the story to be self-contained because I think they want to leave the door open to go do, Stranger Things and then some sort of subtitle I can't think of off the top of my head. Right. But I mean, they're trying to license this into a larger IP. There's currently a play on Broadway called Stranger Things.
Which I believe is canon, and the actor who plays the Doctor in that is going to be Dr. Brenner is going to be like in flashbacks of this season, I believe.
Yep, and it's Stranger Things: The First Shadow. It is about the Joy and Hopper in high school, and what's his name? The guy who becomes Vecna is a teenager. Yeah. He's like a disturbed little kid.
This sounds like you're doing a seamless ad transition.
Yeah, exactly.
About it. And it's great. I just want to thank Today Text for the opportunity to see this great show.
No, but that's
right
what
now it's only in New York, but if you use our code, you totally get 15% off.
But this is IP embodied. Like us having these conversations and it turning into this advertisement is what IP is all about.
Sure, it's what people want. If you're watching this, I assume it's because you like Stranger Things. You're not making it this far in the video because you think the show sucks.
And there's one thing I learned. I think Netflix might have made a documentary about the making of Stranger Things: The First Shadow. I don't really know.
Sounds right.
But apparently there was a plot point in Stranger Things on Broadway that had to be cut because it was going to spoil something for season 5. So apparently there was material that was going to be in it that made the showrunners go, never mind, sorry, we're going to use this. And that makes me say, okay, this has to do with Vecna's origin because that's what the play is all about.
Sure.
So
hashtag it's all connected.
Hashtag it's all connected.
And if it's Vecna's origin, it could also be the Upside Down's origin and Eleven's, because maybe, her opening up the rift was because Vecna was there. Maybe the two of them joining their minds again when she opened up the rift that's what made it create the Upside Down. So going back to Colton's theory, her death, maybe the Upside Down is only alive because of her sustaining it. Maybe her and Vecna both have to go like Harry Potter and Voldemort.
Or have Hopper sacrifice himself on behalf of Eleven. Because I'm starting to think about if she were to die, I think I would prefer her have that happy ending and maybe see like it be Hopper steps in and truly becomes like her father and is willing to give his life.
Hasn't that already happened?
Yeah. Cut to Hopper in a Chinese prison.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like that.
Well, and that's yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah,
I was just gonna say. I feel like Stranger Things, even in just 4 seasons, has repeated the same plot beats so many times that when I think about stuff that can happen at the end of season 5 to really end the story has definitively ended so many times now that it doesn't even work. Like, oh, Hopper finally comes to terms with the fact that he's a new type of father and he gets over it's like, oh no, that was the end of season 1, the end of season 2.
Well, now I will say this though. The Duffer Brothers said that the way they're ending this was something that was actually mentioned and outlined in their original Montauk pitch document. Montauk is what they were going to call the show ahead of time. I do think they have always had this kind of a finale in mind. I think they've always had an end game, but they had no idea, and they shouldn't know. You should never know exactly how you're going to get there unless you're J. Michael Straczynski writing Babylon 5. It's good to have that little loose end, but it does play like they ended every season not knowing for sure if they were going to do another season. Maybe not because of renewal, but because of they just had other opportunities. So before we sign off, though, I just want to get both of your final takes on, because personally, I didn't like season 3 that much. Stranger 4 caught me completely off guard. I loved it. And the strength of season 4 and the time they've taken to make this one has me super excited for this show. But I want to know what you guys, what your expectations are, or if you're excited for season 5. Colton, what about you?
Well, going back to what Cam said, like any good D&D campaign, the series has just gone on a little too long. It's a little too drawn out. We're having fun with it, but there comes a point where it's just like, okay, let's wrap this up. Both the story itself feels drawn out, but also, when did it air? 2016? Is that when season 1 dropped?
I don't know, man. There's so much bad stuff. I'm not going to argue with you, but yeah, if that's how you
feel. Was in high school. I remember being in high school when this show came out, and I loved it. I was such a big fan of season 1, and my enthusiasm has just kind of slowly I don't know, teetered off. I guess I'm with you. Season 4 was kind of like a, wow, they're back a little bit. Honestly, Season 4 probably should have been 3 parts, and they should have ended it there. But I'm excited. It'll be fun to cover.
I have a toxic relationship with Stranger Things because I haven't thought it was good since Season 1. Even the best of Stranger Things has been bad since Season 1. I'm never excited for it. I never look forward to it. And then the second it drops, I watch it all in one sitting, and then sometimes I watch it again. Season 4, even days before it was coming out, I was like, oh my God, Stranger Things is back. I'm so sick of this shit. They just need to end it. Blah, blah, blah. And then it comes out and I'm just sitting in front of my TV like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. This is so crazy. And then I finish it and I'm like, man, that was so bad. And then the next day I sit there and I watch the whole thing again.
I'm in a toxic relationship with you right now. I cannot keep track of your emotions or your feelings on this show.
I don't know, but that's what I'm saying is like it's all over the place. It's complicated. So no, I'm not excited for Stranger Things season 5 at all, but I could tell you that the second it comes out, I'm going to watch the whole thing.
Cam, would you say it insists upon itself?
All right, let's leave it there. Colton got the last line. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And let me know what you guys think. Are you done with Stranger Things? Are you pumped for season 5? Do you have any theories? Let us know down in the comments, or if I mispronounced any names on Twitter, Discord, or on our free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.